Bom, gente, eu sou Bruno Azevedo aqui da Mirage Filmes do Brasil e é um prazer enorme estar com vocês pela primeira vez entrevistando uma pessoa que não só é um dos maiores economistas que existe hoje no momento, mas também um grande autor e grande amigo também que está conosco aqui hoje, o americano Charles Epping, autor do Trust, um livro que com muito orgulho a Mirage Filmes do Brasil fez o convite para ele dessa parceria para a produção da minissérie Trust. Are you excited about Trust becoming a series for TV?
Very excited, Bruno. It's funny, when I was writing Trust, it's a very visual novel. And the idea was I was imagining what it could be as an audiovisual product. And a series was the first thing that came to mind. I don't see it as you go to the movies and sit for 2 hours. It's something that's rich enough and fast-paced enough that you can do it over a long period of time.
You have a lot of things inside that keeps the attention of the people, and you will need a lot of days for the people to watch
right.
Trust.
And the idea would be to expand the novel too, and to make it to sort of tap into all of the rich veins of you've got World War II, you've got the Hezbollah, you have Jewish families, you have a lot of money, you have gold, you have murders, you have betrayal, you have corruption. So and you can go very far with that.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm going to ask you some things about Trust before the people to watch the series, because we are going to take a long time to make all this come true for the television,
Okay.
And so people can be interested to buy your book, and I hope in Brazil we can sell this as soon as we can. Okay.
Great.
So, Trust is your first novel. What inspired you to write it?
It's interesting, Bruno. The story of Trust is, of course, fiction, but it's based on real life events. What happened in World War II to the Jewish people, especially with regards to Switzerland and how they had to put their money in Swiss bank accounts in a special trustee account, is something that happened, but very few people actually are talking about it today. So it was a sort of what-if story, the idea of placing a present-day live-action story in the context of a real, true historical event, and then sort of see how the two interacted with each other.
Is there a real-life connection between the three themes in Trust? The Second World War, the Jewish people, and the Hezbollah terrorist group. Is that right? How did it work?
Yeah, there is, actually. One of the surprises of the book is that when it came out in 2007, the Jewish attack on the Hezbollah set off a whole, as everyone knows, a whole war that happened just at the time the book was coming out. And so there was a lot of interest in Trust, just from the historical perspective, but also from the current event perspective. The Hezbollah, as you know, has a lot of activities around the world. Some of them, in fact, are not terrorist activities. Some are humanitarian, because it's very linked to the Shiite groups that are based in Lebanon. So the idea that the Hezbollah today having interaction with the Jewish people, I think was a very interesting theme, and it was something that I sort of just was playing with when I started writing the novel. And then as historical events occurred, it became reality. It was eerie almost.
Did you have to do a lot of research?
For Trust, it's interesting that the book is full of historical. Everything in Trust is true. I didn't invent anything. I just put things together that, of course, no one had ever put together before.
Yeah, and how long time did it take?
Several years, in fact, but I didn't actually do...
7 years?
Several.
Oh,
I'd say like 3 or 4 years. But I didn't actually spend the time doing research. What made the book really interesting for me was that I was working on a project at the time. I was helping a Jewish family from Budapest get buildings back that had been stolen from them in World War II. And this family now ended up in Brazil and in Canada and the United States and had no more contact with Europe. Most of them didn't speak German. And so they asked me to help them get these buildings back. And so during this process, which was a very long, complicated process, of course the Germans didn't really want to give the buildings back, but the law said that they had to if the family provided all of the documents that were necessary. And so to get these documents, I had to do a sort of international private detective work. I had to travel around the world, get things certified. A lot of the things had been destroyed in World War II. So it was like, it was research, but it wasn't research that I was doing for the book. But while I was doing this project, I was getting to know this family really well.
So you did not have anyone else to do this for you? You did it by yourself?
I did it on my own, yeah.
Jesus,
yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Charles, in your book, you describe how Jewish citizens in Europe during World War II had to put their money in the hands of non-Jewish Jewish trustees. Mm-hmm. Is this actually the way it was?
It was like that. It was a very complicated time. Before World War II started, a lot of Jewish families were having their assets seized by Nazis, for example, in Germany, and then in occupied countries. The Germans, one of the first things they did is seize the assets of Jewish families. They had passed a law that allowed Germans to basically rob all of the riches of Jewish families in Europe. So what many Jewish families did was put their money in Switzerland. The problem is that no one knew if Switzerland was going to be invaded as well. Oh, okay. And in fact, as during the work I did writing the novel, it became clear that there was a very strong possibility, and of course it would have happened eventually anyway, if the Germans had been able to continue the war the way they expected. So the idea was that if Switzerland got invaded, the Jewish families wanted to have a way that their assets, even in Switzerland, wouldn't be seized. So the natural reaction was, and the Swiss government actually provided, and the Swiss banks provided a vehicle for this, which were these so-called trustee accounts. Oh, okay. In German, they were called Treuhandkonten, which means putting your assets in the hands of a friend, a trusted friend, which was kind of the idea of the novel's title. Trust is a bit of an irony because obviously many families didn't survive World War II. The question is, what happened to this money after the war was over? Did the trustee do the right thing, or did the trustee keep the money for themselves? In the novel, what I tried to do and what I did do was actually take a different theory, which if you had told the story of how the trustee would have just stolen the money, it doesn't make for a very good novel. Yeah. So in trust, the whole idea is that the money was preserved, but the trustee was being very conscientious about preserving the secrecy of the account. And he, in fact, in the novel, ended up making the money grow to such a degree that the account itself became an object for an attempt to get the money in today. So that the idea is that in today's world, there's a lot of things going on that we don't even know about, but that are related to what happened in World War II.
And one thing that I want to know, what effect did trust have in the Jewish community? And did you have a lot of feedback from the Jewish readers?
I actually did. There was a huge reaction from the Jewish community. When I was doing the media tour for Trust.
And this reaction was good or bad?
It was, first of all, they were very interested to hear that these accounts were still around. During the 1990s, the US government put a lot of pressure on Switzerland to release the names of all the accounts that had Jewish names in World War II. During that process, it became apparent there were a lot of accounts that didn't have Jewish names, but did in fact belong to Jewish families. So after the book came out, I was contacted by many Jewish families who were interested to find out if possibly they had trust accounts, that their fathers and mothers or grandparents had trust accounts that were still in existence. And Stuart Eisenstadt, former Undersecretary of State of the United States, I met with him as well. And he told me, what you're doing is exactly the right thing for these Jewish families that are still looking. You're providing them information that they had basically given up on. They had decided that there would be no chance. And in the novel, of course, one of the themes is that Alex, the main character, who's not Jewish,